So I got my start working in the marketing world, and particularly with agencies, as a trademark lawyer. And so this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I see every day in our practice how agencies get stopped or delayed or stalled or sometimes confused about trademark issues. This is how they usually show up. We get a call from a client who says, our client really wants this domain name, and they think it'd be a great name for their new product or service. And so we're going to buy the domain name, and then are we good to go? We're good to go, right? The domain name's available. It's awesome. You know how hard it is to get a good domain name? Okay. Another way it shows up. We showed the client 3 new brand choices. They absolutely love the first 2. Great. Have you done any screening, or do you know if there's anybody out there who's using something similar? What have you done to research? Oh, yeah, we didn't do that yet. And you talked to the client already, right? Yeah, and they love them. They love the top 1 and 2. These things have actually happened in my own practice. Not all the examples I'm going to give you today are from our firm, but they are all things that really happened. 3, example number 3. We launched the brand for the client. The client is super excited, and except what? Except they just got a cease and desist letter from some other company out there who sells a similar product or service using a brand that looks or sounds or feels somewhat similar. Same color palette, same logo, same, it's off by a couple vowels. Okay, what did you do to search it before? Yeah, that's a step that we skipped. So that's how these things show up, and I totally understand it. It is hard. Branding is hard. Getting the essence of your client's culture and services and goods, it's hard to do. And so when you find something that you love and you know they're in love with, it's off to the races. Plus, marketing is a very viral, fast-moving business anyway. So how can you reduce the risk of some of these types of things happening? Well, the first thing I want you to leave here with is an understanding that it is awesome to find an available domain name, and I understand how hard it is to get a good one, but it is not the end of the line in terms of your due diligence for adopting a new brand. An available domain name is just that, an available domain name. Conversely, just because the domain name is not available doesn't mean it's not a perfectly available trademark and go-to market brand that your client can use. You might just have to settle for a domain name you don't love as much, but it may be an awesome thing to name the client's brand or something that they sell. So remember, domain name clearance and trademark clearance are related but very different things. Go beyond the knockout search. If you can go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office's search feature and knock out a couple of your choices, and what I mean by knockout is find out that they're absolutely not available, a competitor is using them or somebody else is using them to sell something that might be close in their category, great. Then you've spent no money except some of the time you've sunk into doing that, and you know it's not available, and you can move on with your life and pick something else along with your client. But you need to go beyond that to actually be confident that you've exhausted your due diligence in terms of taking the brand to market. Next, I want to remind you all that trademarks are category specific, and I included this bullet in the slide because I get this question a lot. There's another company out there that sells garbage can liners. What is your client's product? Oh, they sell, I don't know, wheelbarrows. It's nothing, that's a bad example because those are actually pretty close. No, they sell underwear. Yeah, and there's a brand out there that sells garden hoses, and it's the same name, and they own the domain, and so that's okay. It is perfectly legal for 2 trademarks to coexist if they identify different categories of goods or services. So it's not the end of the inquiry. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. So remember that they're category specific, which can be helpful in some cases and can be a cautionary sign in others. All right, copyright violations. I probably should have put this category first because I think it's the area where we see the most stress and drama in terms of advertising agency practice. This is how these kinds of things show up. We just launched a website for a client 6 months ago, and they just called us to tell us that one of the stock photography houses, which I won't name in the recording, but I put an example of one up on my slide, contacted us and said that they licensed the image and they want $10,000 for it. We thought we had an account with them. Our intern grabbed the image. We thought we bought the right license, and we didn't. What do we do now? Example 2. Our client is having a special event for its customers, and they want to play the new Katy Perry song at the event when they, launch their new product. That's okay, right? Or we use freelancers. We use freelancers to do creative work for one of our brand customers, and that freelancer put examples of the work that she did for one of our clients that we paid her for as a contractor on her portfolio website. We needed to take it down. Those are all examples of how copyright can take an agency owner's day off track really quickly when you get that email or that call. So I want to give you a few pointers, first of all, for avoiding some of those things. Read your licenses. Just because you have an account with Getty or Shutter or any of the other reputable stock photography houses, or you've licensed the font, or you've licensed graphics. First of all, if you've done that, awesome, because some agencies, unfortunately, and there's no bad intent here, it is just simply a lack of process around this, and combined with the use of an inexperienced designer or intern who doesn't realize that work on the internet is not free to just right-click and drop into a client's website. And it's literally that simple. That is how some of these things happen. So they thought they used a licensed image, and they may have, but they didn't buy the right license. They maybe didn't buy the website license. They didn't buy the license for the right jurisdiction. It's a global company, and they bought a regional license. Read your licenses. Know what they say, track them, know when they expire, know what the limitations are. We'll talk a little bit about project management later on, along with insurance, to Nancy's question. But read your licenses, know what they say, know what the limits are, and be familiar. Make sure everybody on the account team is familiar, especially the people on the design part of the project. If you want to use the content of a third party who is not your client, an employee of your agency, or an independent contractor with whom you have a written agreement, don't use the asset. It's as simple as that. There is no such thing as using fair use as a defense to copyright infringement in the commercial world. We're all in the commercial world. We're all in the business of creating content, if you're at this event, but running your agencies to sell your strategy and your services to your client so that they can achieve their business objectives. It's all commercial. Fair use never helps you. So it's strict liability. If you've used it and you don't have written permission, or it's not by somebody who works for you, then you've infringed copyright. So no written license, no written permissions, or it's not created by an employee of either the brand client or somebody who works for you, then don't use it. Relatedly to the freelancer, if you don't have a standing practice of having a written independent contractor agreement with every freelancer who works with your agency, that is money well spent, and I would advise you to put that practice in place immediately. If you haven't done that, and you know you've got work floating out there that a contractor has done or contributed, and we have had agency clients get sued or get into legal trouble because of something that a freelancer has done, which their agreement with them could also help you with, then you get a written assignment from them so that you know you own all the rights to the work that they do. Here's the deal. In most cases, you've promised your client that you're not giving them any work that you don't own the rights to. You can't make that promise if you don't actually own the rights. This actually comes up least in my practice, fortunately, and this is the issue of false or misleading ad claims, which aren't the same thing, actually. You can have a claim that is true but misleading, which is equally problematic as far as the Federal Trade Commission is concerned. But I like to include it not only because these are some of my favorite hits. I just had to throw these in here. Palm Wonderful has been pursued by the Federal Trade Commission, I don't know how many times, for their aggressive advertising and use of misleading taglines and product claims. Cheat death. I just love that one. Rice Krispies builds immunity. Vaping is healthy for you, kids. And we all know that Theranos can completely cure your cancer or any other malady you have with one drop of blood. So these are obviously very extreme and aggressive examples of ad claims that actually did get made by these brands. But what it usually looks like is, I don't want to pick on an industry in particular. Let's say, let's use a cell phone carrier because I don't care about them so much. I was going to use car dealerships, but those tend to be local businesses. I'm a little bit more sympathetic to them. Let's say a cell phone ad campaign where you can get unlimited data and unlimited call time for as low as $49 a month for you and your family. And then there's the fine print, which really tells you that that's not the case at all. It's more likely that it's going to show up. So if you work in industries that are highly price sensitive, they're typically retail, B2C type industries. This comes up more often. And with all the social media advertising that everybody does now and buys now, the viral nature of a bad claim can be something that's hard to take back once it's out in the market. So some tips for you as an agency to avoid some of this from blowing back on you. Because this is an area where agencies do have liability if they participate in the development or dissemination of these claims. Ask your client about their product claims. If they're telling you their product does X or Y or Z, ask them in a non-combative manner what kind of documentation they have to support that claim. If they're making comparative claims between their product and somebody else's, ask them where those derive and what information they have that's supportive of them. And I think a non-combative way to ask the question would be, what sort of surveys or market research or scientific research do you typically do to support your product claims? This may be a little less aggressive way to ask it.
Could you even say, if one of your competitors had issue with this, how would we defend?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, this is what project management helps you do, is put that documentation right in your project management system so that if you're ever in a position of having to defend why you created messaging around that claim, you have it. Be clear and straightforward is my next tip, and by that I mean you can say something about a service or a product or a brand that is technically true, but is misleading. And where this usually occurs is where the product audience is more vulnerable. Senior citizens, children especially, when they're not able to discern puffery from outright fantasy versus truth. And so I think I'm going to leave it there because I don't have a super great example of, I suppose puffery is that something is the best X, Y, or Z on the market. Or an example of puffery might be that it'll make you more popular at your next school dance to, shop at this store. Stuff like that that can be misleading, but maybe not to the degree that the FTC would care about. Then there's misleading but true, and the FTC does care about it because it easily gives them a misimpression to the intended audience versus just false claims, which are easy enough to identify and discern.